Hey everyone, it's Akayani Chamberlain from The Living Connection. How are you? It's Thanksgiving is coming up, and last week when I was on the Healing Artist Radio Show, I introduced and launched my Weight Creep holiday Avoid Gaining Weight During the Holidays program. So I'm happy to say that I've got one person who is going to be taking steps to reset their weight and get off that carb and sugar roller coaster to avoid that 1 to 2 pound weight gain that happens annually every year of a person's life, an adult person's life, which leads to obesity, diabetes, heart disease, etc., as an adult, and definitely reduces the quality of life of that person. So this is a way in which you can avoid even gaining the weight in the first place by setting up a healthy foundation all year long. So I shared a lot of tips on that. I put up a blog post about that you can see on thelivingconnection.blogspot.com. It's also on my Facebook page, The Living Connection with Akayani Chamberlain. But today I wanted to talk about the same problem and highlight some other issues. Specifically, I wanted to talk about gluten intolerance, the role that gluten can have in this on health in general, and also because as I peruse the newspapers, I see things, articles like this that comes out in New York Newsday, for example, about healthier hearts, and some proposals on how to do that, which some of which I agree with and some of which I don't agree with, because there always seems to be a constant pushing of drugs on us as a population. And there are ways, why they may be necessary to address an acute problem. The reality is that the human body is not a drug. It's not made out of drugs. That's not what we were created from. We were created out of and are also living in symbiosis with, many, many organisms, microorganisms, different kinds of bacteria. We're flesh and blood, and we need antioxidants and, vitamins and different trace minerals and different kinds of metals appropriate for the human being organism to be able to live a healthy life and thriving. So gluten intolerance, newsflash, I just realized that I'm gluten intolerant. I managed to avoid this for 50 years, I think, because I have been very careful about what I eat, and am very diligent about making the choice for organic um, things. But unfortunately, our food supply is so incredibly contaminated now, thanks to Monsanto and company, that it's getting pretty difficult to avoid unless you're using products that have been rigorously tested to be non-GMO, which is not even necessarily the case. Going to your local bakery, as much as I love my local bakery, there's things that I'm not going to be able to consume now. So to that end, the reason how I actually figured this out is that I was invited to attend a gluten summit. It was a 9-day summit hosted by a doctor named Tom O'Brien, and one of the people that he had on the call was a William Davis MD, medical doctor who actually kind of specializes in cardiology, but also with his work, with patients and having to deal with the concomitant factors that contribute to heart disease, again, that goes back to obesity, which leads to hypertension, etc. Also things like calcium buildup on the arteries. He became very interested in figuring out the role, of empty carbohydrates, like those bagels, etc., that people eat that contribute to that. And of course, because that is in line with the breadbasket and products that are widely used in the United States, from everything from, hot dog and burger buns to bagels, to feeding our livestock with wheat and corn, these are things that, of course, in their natural state, non-tampered with, are okay, but unfortunately now have been tampered with and genetically modified to a great degree by the company aforementioned and some other companies as well. So what does this mean? Briefly, the genetic modification imposed on grasses and wheats and corn has changed the chromosome structure of these plants. So previously, in the song that we have as sort of our national anthem, America, America, God shed his grace on thee, amber waves of grain with amber waves of grain. Well, we don't have amber waves of grain anymore. What we have are stumpier, shorter, genetically modified wheat plants that have been designed to produce, more. Uh, but the difficulty with that is that the chromosome structure has been changed. Now, Dr. Davis is making the point that today's wheat is much different than the wheat that was being used during biblical times, the staff of life that Jesus was consuming, for example, to go back to a previous age where things were certainly far less contaminated than they are now. Their original chromosome structure is 12, but due to genetic tampering, it's now 42. So he was making the point that gliadin, which is what we consume, is vastly different. This was also brought to my attention a couple of years ago by a nutritionist named Andrea Moss, who works here. So this sort of widespread gluten intolerance is due to the fact that this tampering, along with the embedding of pesticides into wheat and corn, yes, as unbelievable as that is to hear, that's what's been going on. And of course, it creates havoc in the gastrointestinal system and the immune system. You may have heard me mention previously that 2/3 of the immune system is located in the gastrointestinal tract, as well as serotonin, the feel-good vitamin. So obviously, ingesting and trying to eat things like this that's creating havoc in the gastrointestinal system is going to have a detrimental effect on the immune system and how you feel. Depression also can be a very great problem for people that have gluten sensitivities. Okay, so what ends up happening is that by taking in a lot of empty carbs, it creates a blood sugar instability. So when I say that the reset kit that I've been talking about, which is very affordable, offers a way for you to reset your body off that carb and sugar roller coaster in a very short period of time, in 5 days. This is what I'm talking about. These are also the surrounding issues that I'm speaking of to go deeper. The reason why the reset program works is that as of December 1st, the kit itself is gluten-free, completely gluten-free, so that's not going to be a problem. And also because it provides a complete meal replacement. It gives your digestive system a break because you're using smoothies, protein shakes essentially, along with a complete spectrum of vitamins and minerals that you also need morning, noon, and night. And you are supplementing, you're optimizing that with the health pack, which contains the mega antioxidants, the chelated minerals. I'm happy to say a plant-based magnesium calcium supplement and autoimmune booster, and along with that come high quality protein bars that you can have that are delicious, that have the chocolate and peanut butter, that also are formulated in such a way that work very well because they have the right amino acids. What does that mean? It means that it makes it easier for your body to digest and to absorb. So you want to stabilize your blood sugar and you want to refrain from damaging your insulin receptors. So your insulin receptors, once they've been damaged, they actually kind of bend like this. They're not able to receive the information. They're not able to receive the food properly. They're not able to receive the information that tells your brain, because remember, leptin is in your brain, and that's the signal that says, I've had enough to eat, you can stop eating now. I've had enough to eat, you can stop eating now. So I mentioned on the radio show that your body can't assimilate these empty calories, and it can't use it properly. So all those bagels again, and hot dog and burger buns, and English muffins and things like that, aside from the problem of gluten that people are experiencing, that we're experiencing, even if that gluten problem wasn't there, the other problem again is that the spike in sugar actually goes up to 190, 190, and then about 2 hours later it plummets down to about 60, 65. So you kind of go through the spike and then you go through a crash. So you'll see people eating chips and all these types of things, going for the energy, right? Because we need sustained energy, going up and down and up and down and up and down, and pretty soon you're numb to your own insulin, you're eating more and more of this, and then you're becoming obese. So this is what the problem is with that continual indulgence and not actually supplementing with high quality nutritionals. Now people will say, we should get this from our food. Of course, we should be getting this from our food. But to paint the big picture and to tie this all in together, the industrial farming practices that we have in this country that have really been out of control, for the past 50 years, I'd say 50 to 75 years, and along with the pesticides and the chemicals in our water supply, and we don't compost, we're not using something like cow manure. Cow manure, again, in its pure state, when you don't have cows that have been put on hormones and antibiotics and being fed flesh and all these different things, it's all a whole. This whole planet and our bodies and the way our bodies relate to other bodies, it's all synergistic. So all these different things have an effect, which we have to think about these days. So moving on, the continual indulgence and these kinds of empty carbs, again, plays into that whole phenomenon of weight creep and putting on that weight. Adult obesity, which, what does that mean? That means that we're actually putting a strain on the heart, on the cardiovascular system, because your heart has the burden of pumping blood, but how much more blood can it pump when it's carrying around extra weight? The other point that I wanted to make is that there is an article that I just showed you here, again, making a point about healthier hearts. And one of the points that it was making was about, well, it makes the point again about cholesterol, but again, eating in a healthy way and avoiding these kind of carbs and actually taking in good fats will keep your good cholesterol healthy, because the fact of the matter is that we need cholesterol, but we need cholesterol that hasn't been damaged. But the other point that Dr. William Davis was making in this gluten-free summit, is that he was able to reduce the calcium buildup in the arteries by getting people off the wheat. He actually has a great book out that I'd like to call your attention to called Wheat Belly. And he was able to do that by 80%, and also people were able to drop a lot of weight, just by cutting these things out of our diet. However, I'd like to qualify his statement too by saying that calcium actually is another thing that the body requires. We require it, also as we're getting older, osteoporosis. We require it for good bone density. Growing children, turning into adolescents, they also require calcium. However, um, what was being left out of this conversation was that calcium cannot be absorbed properly and distributed throughout the body properly where it's needed without the right ratio of magnesium. I actually wrote a blog post about this. I wrote a couple of blog posts about this, about the importance of magnesium for the skin, the nervous system, for growth. Um, but essentially, magnesium are the keys to the car. So calcium is the car, as it were, but without the magnesium, you're not going to go very far, as is evinced by this phenomenon of calcified arteries. So you want to make sure that you take, again, a high-quality magnesium calcium supplement that has the magnesium and the calcium balanced out in the right ratio together, so your body can use things in the right way synergistically. So like so many things, you can have an overabundance of one thing because of dietary choices, lifestyle, I mean basically just ignorance, without having the other elements that are there. What happens so often in this sort of marketing ad, food faddish, get on the bandwagon, so-called distribution of knowledge, is that people will target one thing in God's creation and label it as bad and demonize it, and then, create a campaign to completely put that down. But the fact of the matter is that often the other side of the equation is missing. So that's why I wanted to mention this important point about the importance of having magnesium in your system as well, to balance this out and to make sure everything is distributed properly. Again, that's why I'm happy to tell you about a supplement called Active Calcium. It's called Active Calcium because the calcium is distributed actively in the proper way throughout the body because of the magnesium. And it is plant-based. Yay! So it's not made out of shells, shellfish. Most magnesium products are calcium magnesium products out there on the market are made out of the shells from shrimp and crabs, or bones, or sometimes even minerals. So this is made from a plant-based source, so it's highly bioavailable and highly digestible. Let's see, what other points do I want to make? Oh well, of course, last but not least, this is why I'm so excited about the fact that the Reset Kit, as of December 1st, is completely gluten-free. So the protein bars are completely gluten-free. They were not previously, but the research and development team has been listening, is aware, has been getting the feedback, so you can have that. Also, the vanilla, strawberry, and wild strawberry, I should say, French vanilla, and Dutch chocolate Nutrimeals are now gluten-free. If you need to adjust your program because perhaps you can't have, soy and wheat, some people are allergic to, not wheat, excuse me, soy and whey combination, then we can design a program for you that uses the Nutrimeal Free, for example, which is completely plant-based, made out of potato and pea protein, but that also provides a full spectrum. Let me see. Bring the deliciousness. It's really important that people that are gluten intolerant, now that they have to avoid and cut so many things out of their diet, that you also make sure that you get the complete nutrients that you need, because regardless of the havoc that we may have wreaked on the environment, we still need what we need. So most of the supplements are vegetarian friendly, with the exception of the CoQ10, that is in a gel cap, the Biomega, that is a fish product from sardines and anchovies, and it comes in a gel. So if you're a vegetarian and a vegan, obviously you want to avoid those. But other than that, all of the supplements are vegan and vegetarian friendly. Uh, Many of them now come kosher. Kosher, there is that separation of, dairy, not being able to have that, so those are removed, and we have a whole line of, again, gluten-free, something for everyone. If you want whey, we have one with whey. If you can't have whey, then we have ones with soy and whey. If you can't have whey at all, then there's just one with soy. That would be the French vanilla. And if you can't have any of those, then you can have the Nutrimeal Free. Again, as for the bars, there's Fudge Delight, gluten-free. There's Peanutty Bliss, gluten-free. There's the chocolate chip, gluten-free. If you happen to be one of those people that can't have chocolate or can't have, peanut butter, um, well, actually, there's another one called Go Nuts and Berries, which could be appropriate for some vegans. Um, Although, for people that have an intolerance for nuts, again, you could try the Fudge Delight, or we could brainstorm and come up with something else brilliant for you. So that is my edition of the Living Connection for this week, talking about weight creep, framing it in the context of gluten intolerance, and also um, calcium, magnesium, obesity, overweight, and the effect that it has on your heart. Thank you very much, and I'll see you next week. Oh, I also wanted to mention that Dr. Karen Wolf is giving a very good talk again Monday, November 25th, on glycemic stress, which goes into this also, sugar addiction, um, and the ways that you can avoid getting again into this carbon sugar roller coaster. She's an author of a book. It's called Is Your Lifestyle Killing You? She'll also be touching on type 2 diabetes a little bit. Okay, enjoy.